Hey everyone, it's Darren. Thanks for stopping in. You may have noticed, I don't actually have my Excel background here today because we're not actually going to use Excel. Uh, this video today, we're going to be talking about the difference between random and arbitrary, which is there is difference, and you have to decide if it actually matters to you or not, depending on what you're doing with it. So if you want to see the actual Excel functions for random, I have a link down in the description. Stop down there, have a video already set up, and you can see how the actual Excel functions work and how to use those. Because the rest of the video, we're actually going to talk about what is random and what is arbitrary and which do you want to use. Uh, so the two terms are actually often used pretty interchangeably, and normally that's kind of okay. Uh, but let's start with an example though. Pick a number between 1 and 10. Just keep it in your head. Um, Almost certainly you didn't pick either 1 or 10. And there's a pretty good chance you didn't pick either 2 or 9, in fact. So probably you picked something between 3 and 8. So already I got a 60% chance I know what number you picked. Uh, this is something magicians do all the time when they say, here, pick a card. And they know you're not going to pick the cards right on the outside edges of the fan that they present you with. You're going to pick something sort of from the middle. Uh, if they tell you to pick a number in your head, you're not going to pick the ones at the extreme ends. If you want to mess up their act, pick one at the extreme ends, of course. Um, but humans just do that. It's natural. Uh, if I hand you a book and ask you to go to a random page, you're going to pick a page roughly around the middle of the book. There's no chance you're going to pick page one. There's no chance you're going to pick the last page in the book. You're going to be right in the middle somewhere. If I open it to a page and I say, pick a line number and stick your finger on a line, you're going to do that, but it's not going to be the top line. It's not going to be the bottom line. It's going to be somewhere around the middle. Uh, so humans are just really bad at this. Uh, so what can we do to generate some actual random numbers? Well, if you throw a fair six-sided die, uh, that has a true randomness. As long as you throw it hard enough, it bounces around nicely. A random number between 1 and 6. Um, Another way to do it is that we see all the time if you see the lottery drawings on TV. And they have these big ping pong balls in cages, basically the same balls they use for bingo games. As long as those balls are all equally weighted as they're turning that, those are true random numbers. Unfortunately, those aren't actually convenient if you want to pull random numbers between, say, 1 and 50,000, because it's really hard to get 50,000 balls into one of those little cages. Uh, so what do you do? Well, the old way to do it, and this hasn't been done in a while. Actually, I suppose it is still done, but it's not done nearly as much as it used to be before computers. Is you buy a book of random numbers. And yes, these are actually books of random numbers. And if you talk to old engineers, old statisticians, they've got them sitting on a shelf somewhere. I actually had to go out to University of Michigan Library earlier today to get a look at their book of random numbers because my local libraries anywhere around here didn't have one. They're still in print though. You can still buy them. They're on Amazon. It's 85 bucks. Uh, so this book of random numbers, when you open it up, the first thing you get is 2 pages of instructions of how to pick a random number. And the reason for that is because it says you're going to open it up to the middle, and you're not going to pick that. So you're going to open it somewhere in the middle, which means it's not random. Then you run your finger down the page and you pick a random line. Well, you're going to pick somewhere around the middle of that page. Uh, and then you do a mathematical operation on that. You do a mathematical operation on that result, and that's where you start. And the way you go is you can go left to right, you can go right to left, you can go top to bottom to top, you can spiral around the page if you want. But in order to be truly random, you have to ensure that you are following that same pattern, that exact same pattern for every number you draw for that project. And then those numbers are considered random. Well, how do you know they're random? Well, they actually aren't technically. Those are arbitrary numbers too. They generated the numbers and they ran tests across them. They had mathematicians sit there and test it. to ensure that although yes, you might see 7777777, um, because that does happen in true randomness, but what you wouldn't see is patterns that were induced into it. Uh, so technically, they're still arbitrary, but they're as close as you can get, really, in any real world situation to a random number. And there aren't many of these books around. The one that I pulled from the library, the first edition, I think was 1930 something, and they're using the same number pattern. And these have been used all over the place. So you may say, well, is that not random? Well, it's sort of random enough for most purposes. And it's technically arbitrary, but random enough. It's far more random than when I asked you to pick a number between 1 and 10 because I knew I had it narrowed down to 60% already. Uh, so when computers came out and they became popular, they had a new method available of generating a random number. Except again, it's an arbitrary number. Uh, and what computers do, the process that computers use, is they start with what's called a seed number. And usually, the way to get that is that you will look into one of the computer clocks. Now, I'm not talking about the clock that says it's 5:32 p.m. I'm talking one of the clocks that has tens of thousands of ticks per second in it, and it's counting from the beginning of time for the computer, which is in the 1980s for most computers, uh, and it looks at this number of ticks, and that's its seed number. That's where it starts its calculation. And then with that seed number, it performs some complex calculation on it, which gives it a new number. And now it formats that number and presents it to you. And that's the first number you get. Uh, the number that it got after its calculation, that becomes its new seed typically. So you perform the same calculation on that number a second time, and that gives you a new number, which is your new seed. And it'll perform a calculation, it'll perform formatting on that and present it to the program. And that's your second random number. The numbers are pretty good. Again, they are arbitrary numbers, they are not random numbers. And those numbers typically always are between 0 and just slightly below 1. And so it'll never actually hit 1. So it's a decimal number. And then you have to do mathematical operations with their real basic math in order to turn it into something that is going from a decimal number into whatever number you actually want. And if you want, a number between 1 and 10, you'd multiply it by 10, which gives you between 0 and 9. And then you just add 1 to it, which gives you between 1 and 10. So that's how you run random numbers, and you can then use that through indexes to pick a random line of text or whatever. Uh, so is that perfect? No. It's very easy to cheat it. In fact, programmers typically, in fact, they train this when you learn to be a programmer. While you're writing the programs, you actually will not use the clock for the seed usually. You'll usually put a manual seed in and any of the lower level languages. Now, you can't do this in Excel. Excel doesn't let you seed it. But if you're programming in like BASIC or Pascal or C or any of their subsequent generations, you can actually manually seed your random number generator. So if I put in a 10 and I ask it for 10 random numbers, it will give me exactly the same 10 numbers time after time. Really useful when I'm going in and testing and I'm trying to develop it and I'm trying to make sure it works, especially if I have to go through and do serious calculations on each of those 10. Not at all remotely fair if I'm using those as lottery numbers. So if I programmed into it to, on this date, start with this seed, or on this date, just give out these numbers, um, nobody would know it because, they look like perfectly fine arbitrary numbers. But that's why usually for lotteries and for bingo and stuff, uh, especially if there's money involved, you've got the big hamster wheel, and you turn it several times, and then turn it back, and you pull the balls out. That's true randomness. Anything on the computer, remember, is only arbitrary. Normally, doesn't make any difference. If you've got money on the line, So, if someone says, "Hey, why can't we just do this thing on the computer for the Mega Millions lottery?" I'd feel a lot more comfortable with it being ping pong balls, to tell you the truth. It's going to be truly random and a lot more difficult to cheat. Also, a lot more difficult for it to actually run into anything that is just a program bug that makes it unfair. Anyway, that's the difference between random and arbitrary. Remember, computers are always arbitrary, but usually it doesn't matter. Uh, so if you learned something from this, please hit like and subscribe and hit notify so you can see future videos that come out. I have a Patreon channel also. It's patreon.com/data analysis excellence. Hope to see you here again soon. Thank you.